Hello and welcome to the Rask Network. What you're about to hear and see is limited to general financial information only. Please be sure to speak to your financial planner or refer to our financial services guide available at rask.com.au/FSG before acting on the information.
Welcome back to the Australian Business Podcast. Today, we're in studio again with Zara. Zara, how are you?
Good, Jordan. How are you?
Good. What's been happening this week?
So we've been doing a lot of PPC strategies at the moment. So pay-per-click, which is Google advertising. A lot of service-based businesses at the moment wanting to increase brand awareness, get more leads. Just putting together quite a few of those strategies with the team.
Cool. And in terms of pay-per-click, is it an expensive exercise? Like if say you're in a competitive market, I don't even know what a competitive market is, but if you are in one, can that be a very expensive exercise to get a lead?
Yeah, I mean, it can be. I think there's ways to, reduce that risk. Obviously, SEO comes in there and can help out. But I think it's just understanding what kind of industry, if there's any particular search terms or keywords that we can be targeting that aren't as expensive, that are still relevant.
Yeah. Okay.
I think, want to make sure that whatever we are doing is relevant and, likely to generate leads.
Yeah, cool.
There's a lot of horror stories, I think, that I've heard from business owners that they have had 100, they've worked with an SEO agency and there's been 100 keywords that they've targeted, but they're so irrelevant that it doesn't matter.
Yeah, it's so true. I mean, if you're a plumbing business and you're targeting, I don't know, downlights as an electrician and pointless, and you're spending all this money. So
totally.
100%.
Yeah. What about you? How's your week been?
Yeah, good. We've had a big tax deadline this week.
Okay.
Which has been pretty full on.
Yeah.
So it's just been accounting work all week. But it's been good. Can't complain.
Nice.
In today's episode, we're talking about a very interesting topic, I believe, a topic that you spend a lot of time in, marketing strategies.
Yes.
And we want to talk about the 5 main pillars of a marketing strategy.
Yeah.
So I guess to kick it off, how would you summarize a marketing strategy in your own words?
It's a very good one. I would say that marketing strategy is holistically looking at a business over a certain period of time. So say 12 months.
Yep.
Holistically understanding kind of the direction that we want to be going, what goals we want to be achieving as a business, and then kind of boiling that down or breaking that down to understand, okay, well, in order to achieve that, what are the activities that we need to be doing? What are the channels we need to be visible on? And how can we be in a paid space, but also in an organic space, potentially in a traditional space as well? I guess bringing all of those kind of different strategies together to help achieve an overall kind of outcome for the business.
Yeah, for sure. Interesting that you mentioned traditional because it's something that people don't really think of anymore. It's all like Facebook ads and email marketing. But it's like, what about the letterbox drop?
Yeah.
What about the magnets?
I think there's still a place for them.
Yeah.
For certain, not all traditional advertising still works. But, I do know quite a few businesses that I think there was a really creative campaign that went out a couple of weeks ago around, I think it was from Frank Body, and it was traditional kind of posters along Chapel Street, and it was to kind of promote one of their new products, and it just received huge recognition because it was so creative. So it received a lot of recognition in the digital space as well.
Yeah, okay.
So I think there's quite a crossover, and I think there's ways that we can really be tapping into traditional advertising as well as paid ads. And I think there's still a place for both of them.
Yeah, for sure. And that's why it's super important to have that strategy to see, where you can, I guess, try different things and do different things.
Yep.
So I guess to kick things off,
yes.
What role does social media play in a modern marketing strategy, and which platforms are you currently seeing having the most impact?
Good question. I think looking at, video content, for example, and then looking at platforms like Instagram and TikTok. So TikTok can be a really great place because the algorithm's built in a way that it can get your content out there really quickly to a large group of people. So regardless of kind of the industry that you work in, there's been quite a few businesses that I've been following over the last sort of 12 months. One of them particularly is an accountant, and he started posting, I guess, educational content. And then that's kind of become his kind of core source of lead generation is through his TikTok strategy. And then obviously it works for product-based content, but also in the allied health space. Again, I think when we look about ways that we can be educating customers and can be adding value to their kind of interaction on that platform, adding value to their day-to-day, then it can be a really great space. So I think, in terms of the role that social media plays, super important. If it's harnessed correctly and effectively. And if you've got kind of a bigger picture strategy in place, obviously social media in the term of like organic sense, like Instagram and TikTok, but then also looking in the paid advertising space as well, ways that we can be, I guess, amplifying our efforts through a budget and like paid spend.
Yeah, cool. It's interesting. I'm not sure if it's the same accountant that you're talking about, but I've actually seen one as well, and puts out some great content.
Yeah.
It's not me and it's not Daniel. So maybe we should start our TikTok careers. But it goes to show you, like, even for service-based businesses where traditionally it's like, oh no, it's not for us.
Yep.
Like I've seen a plumber just talking through the day-to-day.
Yep.
And has an abundance of followers. So I think saying that, oh yeah, it's not for us is just a cop-out in this day and age. Like, it's just not true, because everyone can be putting out some form of content. A
lot of the time people just want to get to know the founders of the business and who they're going to be interacting with. If I'm looking for a plumber, you know, it could be that because I've seen 10 videos of this guy doing this thing, it's top of mind. So it could help us to understand, help us to go, okay, well, I need this job done. This is the person that comes to mind. I feel like I know them because I have seen a bunch of content about like their day-to-day and who they are and what they're interested in. So it just kind of helps build that relationship. I guess when it all boils down to it, that's kind of what we want, where, you know, humans, we want interaction, we want to build relationships. So I think that these platforms are just ways to do that. For sure, 100%. The second point in today's discussion is around data and analytics and how that ties into the marketing strategy. So I guess, how does it and how does that work? Good question. So it's super important to be, I guess, having systems in place, whether it be through Google Analytics and potential and like pixel tracking codes and CRM systems, really to understand what's working and what's not. And for business owners, understanding, you know, wherever you're investing your time, your energy, your money, that it's actually paying off and it's actually translating. And then for the future, when we want to continue to invest time, energy, and money, that we're directing in the right space, in the right place. So it helps us to understand what our customers want, what type of conversations they want to be having with us, what services they want provided, what products they're interested in. And then it helps us to also create more content centered around that, but it can also help to create any kind of product manufacturing as well. If we recognize that we're hearing and seeing a lot of feedback, a lot of positive feedback on X product, then I know that I want to create more of that product and I want to make that I want to increase the capacity of my ability to service that product. And then on the flip side, if you put something out there and crickets, then it's a pretty good indication of, okay, well, maybe this wasn't the right decision. You know, there could be a lot of reasons, but if we have got a really effective strategy, really effective communication presence, and we still get crickets, then maybe we didn't necessarily do our research to understand if that was the right business decision. Yeah, it's just so important to, as we're trying all these different things and these different types of strategies with different platforms, that we are tracking. Yeah. And we want to make sure that we're not shooting for the hip and hoping the best, and don't just try something, go, oh, that didn't work. Okay, but why didn't it work? Absolutely. I think knowing that something's worked is great, but knowing why something didn't work is almost more important, because then you know that you don't have to make that mistake, or that it's not a mistake, but you know that you don't have to do it again because you've correctly identified what that drop-off point was, which is so important. I think I also saw a quote from like Bill Gates or something the other day that was like, I'm probably going to butcher the phrasing, but it was along the lines of like, the success story isn't the important one. The thing that you learn the most from is your failures. And I think that's just so important. I think that's where data and analytics can really step in to, you know, yes, you might make that mistake or something might flop, but you can use that data and analytics to really have a successful kind of pathway from that point onwards. For sure. And even on that note, like, yes, talking about products that have flopped and whatever it may be, but at the end of the day, we're spending money to make a return. And if we're not measuring, there's no way to check if it's actually working. So super important that that's front of mind when you are coming up with these strategies, or when you're monitoring what you're doing. Definitely. Cool. The third point of a good marketing strategy question I might ask to you is, what advice would you give to business owners looking to improve their SEO and their online visibility? I would look at keyword research and using some of those tools, which I know you use quite a lot with your business, like SEMrush, and I know we were talking, Owen uses Google Search Console, looking at like setting up Google Analytics. So I think really having those platforms in place that help to support that research for you, so that when you are looking to improve your SEO and your online visibility and you're writing blog content for SEO purposes, that it is insightful and that it's like actually going to be impactful for the business.
For sure. And because if you're just writing content that just for the sake of writing content and it doesn't add value, it's not going to rank well in Google. The algorithm's getting super smart, where especially because of the AI, which we've spoken about as well, where you need to write good content and provide value to the reader to make sure that you are ranking. And these tools are fantastic because they help you see how that's going.
Yeah.
And if it's not going well, then you can run it through there's 100 different tools you can use, but just make sure that, you're using the right amount of keywords, you're phrasing things properly. So
yeah, and yours was all self-educated, right? Like you taught yourself how to use all those platforms.
Yeah. I use YouTube for a lot of it. I find that, I don't know, I enjoy learning. I enjoy reading, but the whole SEO thing, it's like a different language, and it's very odd how it works. That's the wrong phrase. It's very different. Because there's the technical side as well, which I have no idea about, with like the coding and all that type of stuff. So it's more on-page type stuff where you're writing content. But I think SEO is super important for anyone's marketing strategy. I think there should be a place in there. Again, probably more so service-based businesses. What do you think? Do you think e-com as well? Or?
Yeah, I think both. I think in e-com you can be looking at like on page in terms of like product descriptions and those sorts of things. So I think it's just as applicable for service and for e-com.
Cool. The fourth pillar, we should call them pillars. The fourth pillar of a good marketing strategy is about branding. And how do you think we can create a strong brand in the marketplace?
I think there's so many things around branding and reputation that can help. And I think obviously initially when we think about branding, we think about like visual identity. And so when we talk about that, we mean, logos, colors, the way that a business visibly shows up in the digital space. And I think that's super important, having branding and a logo that aligns with whatever your business is. So, particularly, in the accounting financial space, you want to work with a professional, you want to work with someone that's like clean and intelligent. And so I guess being able to translate those values into your branding is super important. And then I think how that can translate into the way that we're communicating and like our brand of values and the way that we're showing up as well and the way that we're communicating with people. So I think we've got, the visual identity in terms of, like I said, that logo. And then we've also got like our brand reputation and like the brand's personality, I guess, is also super important. So ways that we are communicating and ways that we're upholding the ways that we're communicating with people. And so that can be everything from social media and the way that we're connecting with people, what platforms we're utilizing, the type of content that we're sharing, what sort of education pieces we're sharing as well. And then I guess it also boils down to like your customer service and what you're known for, and that your reputation plays such a massive part in your branding as well, because quite quickly you can get known for having poor customer service or really fantastic customer service, and that plays a huge part in your brand and your digital presence and your digital footprint. So I think there's kind of quite a lot that kind of comes into branding, and I think it can be really important depending on the industry that you're going in terms of what's kind of that key pillar for you.
Let's use an example. If I was an e-commerce business selling skincare products, how would I make this part of my strategy?
So I guess initially, if I was starting out, I would look at working with, again, it all boils down to like financial capacity as well. But I would look at working with a graphic designer or a web developer. So looking at ways that we can start with a really strong foundation. So start with, I guess, going back a few steps, potentially before we even look at like website and logos and branding, we would understand, okay, who are we as a business? What do we exist for? What are our kind of core values? What do we want to be known for? And how do we want to show up? And what relationship do we want to have with our customers? So then from there, I would be building my brand values. And from there, I would then be going to a graphic designer or a web developer or a branding specialist and saying, look, this is my product. This is my brand's personality. This is what I really want to be showcasing. Help me create a visual identity that, really, I guess, lifts those brand values and really talks about it. So you've kind of got like the physical component as well as like the digital product.
Interesting, because I think at the start as a business owner, it's not really something you sort of think about. You think about, I'm going to either sell a product or I'm going to do this service.
Yep.
And that's something that sometimes business owners will never think about.
Yep.
But even if you are established, you can still go back and implement all of those things that you've just mentioned. And you can go through and you can have a session where you nut out all of your brand values and what that looks like. And it's never too late to redesign the color palette or logo, whatever it may be. So it's something that I've actually started to appreciate the last probably 6 months or so with that type of stuff.
Okay.
And especially when we went through the branding for Inflection, like how that all worked and how it sort of flowed.
Yeah, of course.
Because it was really interesting to see and hear yourself and Soph talk about like the different colors and what they mean and what it looks like. And Owen mentions it too. And I'm just like, okay, it makes sense. Like now that I look at it, it makes sense. Like what our values are and how that's articulated, articulated, I should say, drawn, thought out on the website. So
yeah, definitely. And like color psychology as well. And that's obviously part of like graphic designers is like, the color blue symbolizes like trust. And depending on the shade of the color blue depends on what else that can be. So if it's a really deep blue, then it is trustworthy. If it's a lighter blue, then it like evokes other sorts of emotions. And then that as a whole, how that translates into the way that people perceive your business and how they perceive your brand.
Yep.
And so quite often it can be really jarring if you see, like a physiotherapist or a chiro with like pastel colors, for example, because sometimes what we evoke with pastel coloring can be, playful.
Yep.
And so sometimes there can be like a disconnect there as well.
The last pillar of a marketing strategy, I guess, is being able to future-proof.
Yeah.
So in your eyes, what does that look like?
That's such a good question. And I think it's really making sure that our digital footprint is further than just one platform. So obviously we can have a really successful platform, but then making sure that we're connecting with businesses and individuals or potential customers on different platforms as well. So if I'm an allied health professional, maybe I'm also looking at like building a network on LinkedIn, as well as having an email marketing database, as well as having social media. But then I think looking at like future-proof, like ways that we can be building a business and our business model, shaping it around like AI and AR and like ways that we can be incorporating that into our business. Obviously, maybe not right now, but if we're looking down the line in like 5 or 10 years, what does that look like? And does my current business hold itself in its current business model in 5 years' time if all of these changes in technology happen? And is there something that I could be doing now before that comes into play that I can slowly start transitioning my business in a direction that can be more virtual?
Yeah. And I guess it's not about just sort of narrowing the focus down to one thing and then just forever staying focused on that one thing. Whether Facebook ads are working now, fantastic, great.
Yeah.
Keep going. But what else could we be doing?
Diversify.
Yeah. Because you would know better than me, but I know on like Google, the algorithm's always changing and things are always changing. So if you're at the wrong end of that and your whole business is dependent on that's a significant problem.
Yeah. And, even if we go back like a month to like TikTok and like all of the kind of conversations that were centering around, the US banning TikTok and ByteDance and all those kinds of things, there was a huge conversation around like, oh my God, what if TikTok disappears? And all of these business owners that have built their entire business strategy and business model, and that's their way of communicating with people. If that happened, thank goodness it didn't, because so many businesses have built their business using that as a core pillar of their marketing strategy. But how can we be diversifying our entire business in a way that we can be future-proofing it?
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm sure that would have triggered a lot of conversations.
Totally. Yeah.
Especially where they're just focusing on TikTok, using that example.
Definitely.
There would have been some crisis meetings, I'm sure.
Yeah, 100. I'm sure there would have been.
Yeah. Oh, awesome. We covered a bit there.
Yeah, totally.
And I think there's some really practical things that listeners can implement and can do for their own businesses. But if they don't want to do that, they want someone else to do it, get in touch with Zara. There's a link in the show notes where you can book a free discovery call. And I'm sure she'll run through a lot of the points that we have today. So feel free to reach out.
Definitely. In a bit more depth too.
For sure.
Yeah.
And more business specific.
Yes.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks, Zara.
Thanks, Jordan.
Thanks for watching this video on the Rask Network. While you're here, don't forget to like and subscribe so you can get videos each and every day on business, finance, investing, and so much more.